My sister forced me to sign away my share of the family company. She froze when the board meeting started. The pen felt heavier than it should have. My hand was shaking. I noticed that. Marina noticed it too, because she smiled. The conference room on the 14th floor of Whitmore Holdings had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the whole city. My father had chosen this room on purpose. He always said a leader should be able to see everything at once. I used to love that view. Standing there that morning, I could barely look at it. Marina slid the contract across the polished table without a word. Like what she was asking me to do was ordinary. 2 lawyers sat on her side of the table. One had a pen already uncapped and pointed in my direction. The other kept his eyes down, which told me everything about how he felt about being there. "The board meets in 5 minutes, Elena," Marina said. "This is the cleanest way to handle it. You know that." I looked at the signature line. My father's company. His 31 years of work. I signed. Marina smiled and said, "Thank you." It felt like a knife going in slowly. She added, almost as an afterthought, "You won't be needed in the boardroom." "Not anymore." I stood. I picked up my bag. I walked toward the door. Then I stopped. I turned around and walked straight back into the boardroom. The door was heavy glass with a chrome handle. I pushed it open without knocking. The room went quiet immediately. 8 faces turned toward me. I had grown up watching these men and women sit around this table with my father. I recognized every single one of them. Marina came in right behind me. I heard her footsteps stop the moment she crossed the threshold. "Elena." Her voice had changed. The calm was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. A small crack. The first one I had seen from her in a very long time. "You don't have a seat here anymore," she said. I pulled out the chair at the far end of the table. My father's chair. The one with a small scratch on the left armrest from a heated vote in 2019. I sat down. "I do," I said. "For now." A board member named Arthur Voss leaned forward slightly. Marina looked at her lawyers. One of them gave a small, uncertain shake of his head. I had been waiting for this moment for 4 months. I let myself breathe. "The transfer," I said clearly, "is not complete yet." The room did not explode. It simply became very still, the way a room does when something important has been said and everyone is deciding how to respond. Marina set her folder down. "The contract is signed, Elena. You sat across from me and signed it. Everyone in that conference room watched you." "I did sign it," I said. "I am not disputing that." I opened my bag and removed a single sheet of paper. I had printed it 3 weeks ago and kept it folded inside a book on my nightstand. I smoothed it flat on the table. "Section 14, Paragraph 3 of the Whitmore Holdings Shareholder Agreement," I said. "Drafted by our father in 2017. Any transfer of founding shares exceeding 20% must receive formal acknowledgement during an official board session to take legal effect." I looked up. "We are currently in an official session." The room was silent. Marina's lead lawyer pulled out his copy and flipped to Section 14. Arthur Voss cleared his throat. "That does appear to be the language." "This is a technicality," Marina said. The legal advisor, Pauline Reeves, shook her head. "It is the agreement, Marina. Elena is technically still a shareholder until this board formally acknowledges the transfer." Marina recovered quickly. She always did. "Fine," she said. She placed the meeting agenda in front of her. "First item is the quarterly performance report. If Elena wants to sit and watch, that is her choice. It will not change the outcome." She looked around the room with the confidence of someone who had already counted every vote before walking through the door. 3 of the 8 board members were hers. Another 2 would follow whoever seemed in control. Marina had always understood power the way my father did. You do not wait for it. You build it quietly, over time, until the moment arrives. I let her begin. I sat and watched and said nothing. Halfway through the first presentation, when the room had settled into the rhythm of numbers and charts and language that makes most eyes glaze over, I raised my hand. "I would like to make a shareholder statement," I said. "A final one, given the circumstances. Marina looked at me with something almost like pity. Elena. It is within my rights, I said. Arthur Voss nodded. It is. I opened my laptop and turned the screen so the room could see it. Then I projected an email onto the wall. The date in the top corner read 11 days before my father died. The email was short. My father had never used 10 words when 3 would do. The subject line read, "For the record." The body said, "I am documenting my concerns about internal actions taken without my knowledge or approval. If something happens to me before I address this formally, I want it understood that I did not authorize these transfers. Someone close to me is moving against the company. I hope I am wrong." The room was very quiet. "This is irrelevant," Marina said. "Dad was ill. He was stressed. This could mean anything." It could, I agreed. Except for one detail. I clicked to the next slide. It showed the email metadata. "This email was scheduled," I said. "It was not sent the day he wrote it. It was programmed to send automatically 11 days later, the day after he passed." A woman named Constance Obi, who had been on the board 12 years and had known my father since before I was born, sat up very slowly. "He knew," she said quietly. "He was documenting himself," I said. "Because he believed he might not be here to explain it in person." Marina's hands were flat on the table. The way hands look when their owner is working very hard to keep them still. Arthur Voss spoke next. He had joined the board 9 years ago at my father's personal invitation. He had the kind of face that gave very little away, which was why I trusted him. "I would like this email formally entered into the meeting record," he said. "Seconded," said Constance Obi. Marina looked at Arthur with something like recognition in her eyes. "Arthur," she said carefully, "I think we should table this and allow legal to review it outside this meeting." "I was contacted by Elena 6 weeks ago," Arthur said. The room shifted. She shared concerns with me. She asked me to wait, to observe, and to let this meeting proceed naturally before drawing conclusions. He paused. I agreed because the concerns were serious enough to warrant it. Marina looked at me. The expression on her face was one I had never seen from her before. Not anger. Not contempt. Something closer to the rapid, silent calculation of someone who has just realized the board beneath them is not as solid as they believed. I had known Marina my whole life. I had loved her and defended her to people who found her difficult. But I had watched her for 4 months with the attention of someone collecting proof for a case they had already solved. Let me tell you what the last 4 months actually looked like, because from the outside it probably appeared as though I had done nothing. I had requested early retirement. I stayed away from the office. I let Marina make announcements and reposition herself as the natural heir to Whitmore Holdings without public argument. People assumed I had simply stepped aside, the quieter sister choosing peace over a fight. That was the point. While Marina was building her case, I was building mine. I hired an independent forensic accountant named Bernard Osei, who had spent 20 years with the Financial Crimes Division before going private. I gave him 3 years of records. He found it in 6 weeks. 3 sets of transactions, all small enough to avoid automatic flagging, all routed through a holding company registered in a name I did not recognize. It had been created 14 months before my father's death and had received money from Whitmore Holdings 7 times. The total was just over $2 million. Every single approval bore Marina's signature. I put Bernard's full report inside a sealed envelope and placed it in my bag. Then I took out just the first page and slid it to the center of the table. "I would like to discuss some financial inconsistencies," I said. Marina laughed. It was a short laugh, the kind designed to make the other person feel small. She had used it on me since we were teenagers. When I said I wanted to study business, she laughed like that. When I told her our father's Western expansion was moving too fast, she laughed like that. The laugh was a door closing in your face while the person doing it smiled at you. "Elena." She shook her head. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You are desperate. You know the transfer is going through and this is your way of making noise. These are Bernard Osei's findings," I said. "Not mine." I passed copies of the first page down the table. Constance Obi read hers and placed it face down. "These approvals," said a board member named Franklin Addo, tapping his copy, "are signed by you, Marina." "I sign dozens of approvals every week," Marina said. "I would need context." "The context," I said, "is that the receiving company has no registered business relationship with Whitmore Holdings, no contract on file, and no record of services rendered." "Show me the signatures," said Pauline Reeves. I turned to page 4 and passed it forward. Franklin Addo called for an emergency audit before I even reached page 5. "Given what is being presented," he said carefully, "I think the board has a responsibility to verify these figures independently before we proceed with any shareholder vote." "Agreed," said Constance. "This is completely out of order," Marina said. She stood up. She had always been better standing than sitting. "I am the acting chief executive. I have the authority to set this agenda and an audit is not on it." "You have that authority under normal circumstances," Pauline Reeves said carefully. "But under a contested share transfer, that authority is limited. The agreement is clear." Marina stared at Pauline. Pauline did not look away. This was the moment I had thought about most during those 4 months. Not the confrontation with Marina. Not the documents or the recordings or the careful evidence I had built piece by piece. This specific moment. The moment when the people Marina assumed were hers would have to choose between loyalty to her and duty to the company. Pauline Reeves had been the company's legal advisor for 8 years. She was precise and fair, and she had, I knew from Arthur, genuinely admired my father. She turned to the room. "I am recommending we approve the audit request." Theodore Crane voted against the audit. He had been on the board for 6 years. Polished, well-spoken, and always reminded me of someone who had spent a great deal of time learning to appear reasonable. He voted no and then looked at me with something almost like apology. "Elena has been excluded from major decisions for 2 years, he said. "This presentation, compelling as it appears, needs to be understood in that context. She has an obvious personal stake in disrupting this process." "You are right," I said. He blinked. "I have been excluded. From strategy meetings, acquisition discussions, quarterly reviews. My reports were downgraded 14 months ago. I noticed every instance." Theodore glanced at Marina. A very brief look. The kind that tries to be invisible. "I let it happen," I continued, "because I needed to understand the pattern. When you exclude someone, you stop hiding things from them. You become careless about what they can see from a distance. I learned more about this company from the outside than I ever could have from this table." I opened my folder to the next section. Every major decision I was excluded from left a paper trail. 14 months of that trail leads to the same destination. "Shell companies," I said. 3 of them. The first company was called Arlen Capital Advisors. It had a registered address in Delaware, a single director, and no visible clients. It had received $400,000 from Whitmore Holdings in 2 payments, both approved under Marina's signature, both coded as consulting fees. The second was Pelham Advisory Group. Similar structure, similar address. $600,000 over 3 transactions. The third was Vance Strategic Solutions. $800,000. 1 lump payment. No invoice on file. $2 million total. Spread across 3 entities that did not appear to exist as functioning businesses. I had all 3 companies investigated, I said. Bernard Osei traced their ownership through 4 layers of registration. 2 led back to accounts with no clear individual owner. I paused. The third one did not. I turned to the last page of Bernard's summary and placed it at the center of the table. Vance Strategic Solutions is ultimately owned by a holding trust connected to a personal account. I looked slowly around the room. That account belongs to someone currently sitting at this table. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence than any that had come before it. The kind that presses down on everyone equally. Theodore Crane did not move. Theodore Crane sat very still for a long moment. Then he exhaled slowly, like a man releasing something he had held for much longer than just today. Marina approached me 2 years ago, he said. The room shifted. Marina straightened. Theodore, she said sharply, do not. She told me the company was going to be restructured anyway, he continued. That the split between the two of you would happen regardless. She said the money was a consulting arrangement that would be retroactively formalized. He looked at his hands. I understood later that it would not be. You took company funds, Franklin said flatly. I was given them, Theodore said. I understand that is not a meaningful distinction legally. He looked at me. Marina told me you had already agreed to sell your stake voluntarily. I never agreed to anything, I said. I know that now. Marina was on her feet again. Theodore is constructing a self-serving story to protect himself from the audit he knows is coming. Whatever he says, he is protecting himself. Constance Obi looked at Marina with the steady patience of someone who had heard a great many explanations and was no longer impressed by any of them. Is there more, Elena? She asked. Yes, I said. There is more. I opened the second envelope. I had carried it for 3 weeks without opening it in front of anyone. Not even Arthur knew exactly what it contained. I had told him it was significant and verified. I had not told him what it said, because some things need to land fresh in a room to carry their full weight. My father had a will, I said. Most of you have seen the version filed with his estate attorney. I passed copies to each board member. This is a different version. Drafted 4 months before he died. Given to a different solicitor entirely, a woman named Grace Tanaka, who practices in a separate city and had no prior relationship with this company. Marina was staring at the document. Her eyes moved quickly across the lines. She stopped at the second page. Her expression did not collapse. Marina was too controlled for that. But a stillness came over her, the sudden absolute stillness of someone who has just encountered something they had not known existed. She looked up at me. Where did you get this? Her voice was very quiet. Grace Tanaka contacted me 6 weeks after Dad died, I said. He had left instructions for her to do exactly that. The condition was written plainly. My father had never been a complicated writer. His language was direct and his reasoning was clear. In the event that circumstances arise requiring a determination of leadership for Whitmore Holdings, the document read, control of the founding shares shall pass to the daughter who demonstrates ethical leadership under direct scrutiny. This determination shall be made in the presence of the full board. Franklin read it twice, then set it down. That is remarkably specific, he said. He was a specific man, I said. This meeting, Constance said slowly. She looked around the room. Nobody spoke. I watched the understanding move through the room like something visible, each person arriving at the same place by a slightly different path. He anticipated this, Arthur said. He built a mechanism for it. He had reason to believe something like this would happen, I said. The scheduled email proves that. He did not know exactly what form it would take. But he built a structure that could respond. Marina stood again. This document is a forgery. Dad would never structure things this way. He did, I said. Which is exactly why he had it verified. I looked at the door. I invited someone here today, I said. She has been waiting in the lobby for 40 minutes. Marina moved fast. She was around the table before I finished the sentence. This is manipulation, she said. Everything about this is orchestrated. You planned this entire meeting. The signing, the walk-in, every single reveal. Her voice had finally cracked open. The calm was still there, but underneath it was something hot and ragged. You are doing exactly what you are accusing me of. Taking control through back channels. I prepared, I said. Those are different things. You set me up. You tried to take our father's company from me with a coerced signature, I said. I let you walk me into that room this morning. I let you slide that contract across the table. I let you smile at me the way you did. I looked at her. I signed because I needed this meeting to happen. I needed every person in this room here, paying attention, with all the evidence already in front of them. The room was absolutely still. I am not manipulating a process, I said. I am using the one our father built. Pauline Reeves walked to the door and opened it. A woman in a grey coat stepped in and looked at the room without visible emotion. "This is Miriam Gillade," I said. "She is an independent legal expert in estate documentation." Miriam Gillade had been doing this work for 19 years. She said that at the beginning, not as a boast, but the way a doctor gives credentials before a diagnosis. She set her briefcase on the side table and opened it with the calm efficiency of someone who had walked into many difficult rooms and expected to walk out of all of them. "I reviewed this document against 3 reference points," she said. "The known signature samples, the paper stock and ink composition, and the metadata of the digital draft file provided by Grace Tanaka." She looked at the board. "The will is authentic. Drafted on the date indicated. The signature is consistent. There are no signs of alteration." Marina said nothing. "There is one additional item," Miriam said. She reached into the document tube and removed a sealed envelope with my father's initials across the seal in his handwriting. "Grace Tanaka included this with the will," Miriam said. "My instructions were to deliver it unopened to the board in the event the will was presented in a formal session." She set it on the table. "I have not opened it." Arthur Voss looked at me. I nodded. He picked up the envelope and broke the seal carefully. "The way you open something you understand is irreversible." Inside the envelope was a USB drive and a single handwritten note. The note said, "Play this for them. You will know when it is time." Arthur inserted the drive into the laptop. The projector screen lit up. He double-clicked the file and stepped back. My father appeared on screen. He was sitting at his desk at home, in his private study with the bookshelves and the photograph of my mother. He looked tired. He wore a blue shirt. His hands were folded on the desk. He looked directly into the camera. "If you are watching this," he said, "then things went the way I was afraid they would." His voice was steady. My father had always had a steady voice. "I built this company for my family," he said. "For the idea that you protect what belongs to everyone, even when it would be easier to take it for yourself." He paused, looked at his hands, then back at the camera. "One of my daughters has made choices I cannot accept. Choices that put personal control above the trust of the people who built something alongside me." He stopped. "I will not name her here. I want the truth to become clear on its own. The evidence will speak. It always does." The screen went dark. Nobody in the room moved for a long moment. Then everyone seemed to breathe at once. "He did not name her," Theodore said. Quietly, not as an argument, just as an observation. "No," Arthur agreed. "Either of us," Marina said. She had sat back down, hands in her lap. "He could be talking about either of us. Elena has every motive to make this look like it points at me." "It does point at you," Franklin said. "It points at one of his daughters," Marina said. "Not specifically." Constance looked at me. "You said you knew how to prove which one he meant." "I do," I said. I had rehearsed the next part in my apartment at night, standing in the kitchen, speaking to the empty room. I had tried different versions. More careful ones. Softer ones. In the end, I decided the plainest version was right, because my father had always taught me that the truth does not need decoration. Before he died, I said, my father had a security system installed in his home study. High resolution. Motion activated. The footage stored automatically to a private server. I looked at Marina. He gave me access to that server 8 months before he passed. The footage was 47 seconds long. I had watched it many times. The first time, I sat on my kitchen floor afterward without moving. Not because I was shocked. By that point, I already knew what Marina had done. I had the financial records, the shell companies, Bernard's careful and damning report. But knowing something and seeing it are 2 different things. Watching my father look at my sister with an expression equal parts sadness and resolve, that was different from knowing. I played it for the room. Marina was in the footage. Sitting in the chair with the blue cushion, leaning forward. Her voice was sharp and clear. "You are going to give me full operational control," she said to him. "Or I will take it through the board. I have the votes, Dad. I have had them for a year. My father looked at her for a long moment. You think having the votes is the same as being right. In business, it is, Marina said. Then you have not understood anything I taught you, he said quietly. The footage ended. The room did not move. Marina stared at the blank screen. She had gone very still. The stillness of someone who has run out of directions to move in. Marina said nothing for a full 10 seconds. It was a business conversation, she finally said. Difficult, yes. But just business. Her voice was controlled, but it no longer had the quality of someone who believed what they were saying. It had the quality of someone continuing to speak because stopping would feel like surrender. He was frustrated with me, she said. I was pushing him harder than he wanted. That is not a crime. The money is a crime, Franklin said flatly. Theodore Crane cleared his throat. Marina contacted me 18 months ago, he said. She told me that if I did not support the transfer of operational control, she would expose personal decisions I had made that would damage my reputation. He looked at the table. I cooperated because I was afraid. Theodore, Marina started. I am done, he said. He looked at her with the expression of a person who has been carrying something heavy for too long and has finally decided to set it down. Whatever consequences come, I am done. Marina looked around the room. At Arthur, who met her gaze without expression. At Constance, who looked back steadily. At Franklin, writing on his notepad. At Pauline, hands folded, eyes on the table. She did not look at me. Votes began to shift before anyone formally called for them. It happened the way things happen in rooms full of careful people. Not all at once, not dramatically. One person moved their chair slightly. Another set down their pen and picked up the copy of the will. Arthur Voss said something quietly to Constance Obi and she nodded slowly. Franklin stopped writing and stared at the blank screen. Marina sat very still. She had stopped speaking. I think she understood that speaking would only add more weight to a side of the scale already tipping away from her. Pauline Reeves spoke carefully. Given what has been presented today, and given the authentication of the revised will, I want to formally advise the board that Marina's position as acting chief executive is now under legal review. She paused. There are grounds for a formal investigation into these transactions. The board would be failing its duty if it did not refer this matter to external authorities. Do you understand what that means? Franklin asked Marina. Yes, she said. I understand. Then you understand, Pauline continued, that you cannot remain in an executive role while that investigation is active. No one argued. The room had made its decision. You could feel it the way you feel a tide turning. Arthur Voss looked at me. The board is prepared to recognize the transfer of founding shares as invalid under the conditions in the agreement, he said. And given the will's conditions regarding ethical leadership, we are prepared to recognize your rightful standing as majority shareholder. He folded his hands. That would give you immediate authority to assume the executive role. I looked at the table for a moment. There is one condition, Constance said. You would need to formally request Marina's removal and pursue legal action. We cannot protect the company's interests without a clear legal record. I had thought about this moment too. I had always assumed when it came, the answer would be obvious. My sister was sitting 3 seats away, looking at her hands. She had not cried. Marina never cried in front of people. But her face had the quality of someone who had arrived, finally and fully, at a place she had been moving toward for a long time and found it nothing like she imagined. I thought about being 12 years old, sharing a bedroom with her. The way she used to lean over my bed in the dark, checking that I was breathing. I thought about my father. No, I said. The room went quiet. I will not pursue that condition. The silence lasted several seconds. Then several more. Elena, Franklin said carefully, the board cannot simply. I am not asking the board to ignore what happened, I said. The financial irregularities need to be investigated. Theodore's testimony needs to be on record. The auditors need to go through every flagged transaction. I looked around the room. All of that will happen. Then what are you proposing? Arthur asked. I want to restructure this company, I said. Not take it over. Restructure it. New financial oversight with an independent committee reporting directly to the full board. Mandatory transparency on all transactions above a set threshold. A formal ethics policy every board member signs annually. I let that sit. And Marina stays, I said. The surprise in the room was genuine. Not in her current role. Not with executive authority. But she knows this company as well as I do. She built parts of it that I did not. Throwing that away serves no one, including our father's memory. I looked directly at Marina. She answers to the board. Full stop. No unilateral decisions. No financial approvals without co-signature. And the investigation proceeds independently. Arthur looked at Constance. Constance looked at Franklin. Franklin looked at Pauline. That structure could work, Pauline said. All in favor. Every hand went up. They asked Marina to leave the room while the formal vote was recorded. She stood and picked up her folder. She buttoned her jacket the way she always did when she was preparing to face something, starting at the bottom button and working up. She did not look at me as she walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle. I thought I was protecting the company, she said. She said it to the door, not to the room. I thought you would sell your stake eventually. I thought if I moved fast enough, I could keep everything Dad built from being broken apart. She paused. I told myself that for a long time, she said. I think I almost believed it. She pushed the door open and walked out. The room let out a collective breath. The vote took 11 minutes. Marina's removal from the executive role passed unanimously, with one abstention. That was Theodore's. He had agreed to testify fully, and abstaining was his way of stepping back. The founding shares were formally recognized as mine. Arthur shook my hand. Constance nodded. Pauline began drafting the formal resolution. I sat in my father's chair and looked out at the city. The meeting ended at 2:30 in the afternoon. I stayed in the boardroom after everyone else had gone. I needed a moment with the quiet and the view. With the scratch on the armrest beneath my left hand. I opened my bag and took out the copy of his video message that Miriam had given me. I read the transcript slowly, the way you read something you have already memorized but want to feel again. At the bottom of the page, there was a handwritten note I had not noticed before. My father's handwriting. Elena. You were always the one who read the fine print. The one who noticed the scratch on the armrest and asked me where it came from. I did not leave you a company. I left you a test. I needed to know if you would protect what I built the right way. Not by winning. By being worth winning. You passed. I just needed the room to know it too. I put the note in my bag and stood up. The city spread below the windows the way it always had. My father's view. Mine now, to protect. I walked out and got to work.